Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. Lo and behold, it happened. I kept bringing it up before. I think I brought it up last week's episode. But I finally got the answer. I knew it was coming up. Just the way shows are structured and everything, and when you're telling a story, I was like, it felt like it was necessary. But nevertheless, this episode dealt with Bull's ex-wife, Isabel. Obviously, we just call her, just calling her Izzy for short. Which I thought was just kind of interesting because it was kind of like you got set up to the problem first. Because I thought the circumstances when we meet her is like they cross paths in some other circumstances, just like, oh, something happens and they cross paths like that. Just like Benny ended up crossing paths with his ex, that one case like that. But it's like this particular case, it's like she's kind of in sort of on trial, because essentially there's a lady named at the beginning named Olivia who's basically following her routine, and basically she's allergic to bee pollen, and basically during like her concoction she's making a smoothie and whatnot, but like the powder that she used to, and she ended up getting from Izzy's and her like company and whatnot, ended up having bee pollen in it, and she ended up dying from it. So what's kind of interesting too about this episode that I'm thinking about, because it might have been last week's episode or it might have been the episode before last, but it was like the fact is that Marissa is back with her ex, and then now in this episode we're dealing with Bull and his ex. I mean, more so than anything, the episode more focuses on Benny and Izzy, because apparently they haven't talked in like 3 years, because the last time they talked was Izzy offered him a job, but he turned her down and ended up working with Bull afterwards. But because that kind of leads to a lot of stuff. A big focus of this episode, a lot of the team is trying to learn. It's like, oh my God, how does it feel defending your ex-wife? It's like, oh, you're defending Izzy. Isn't this a little weird for you? Isn't this a little personal for you? For him, he's saying it's about just purely getting Benny and her back together. He kind of stated that from the beginning. He let Benny know that. Obviously, the main reason why he's taking it is, that, but also because it's like, if they don't, she will lose her entire company because she's being sued. She's being held liable for Olivia's death. It was a very interesting episode because we got to learn a lot of things about a lot of different people. Kind of found out that Izzy and Bull were only married for 2 years. Not like that's a bad thing or nothing, but I thought they were married a lot. I guess in my mind, I thought they were married a lot longer than they were, but it was like only 2 years. I was actually surprised to hear that. And, it seems obviously one of the big reasons for that is because Bull is the way he is. He kind of over-examines a lot of stuff. And for her, she felt like for her, because Bull even says it himself, it's like a little bit of both of them, the reason why their relationship kind of fell apart. Because later on in the episode, she kind of feels like, because the thing is, she's a little bit of a perfectionist. She's kind of got this whole persona of being very perfect and whatnot, which is kind of what kind of screws her over when it comes to the jury and everything. Because it's like, Bull kind of brings up the whole fact is of love-hate relationship. A lot of people in the jury like her, know of her, and respect her, but at the same time, they hate her because she's so perfect that, she never has any flaws. She's not messed up. She's never made any mistakes. That she's Miss Perfect. And to them, it's like they like her, but they're subconsciously, basically, they want to tear her down because it's like, hey, the fact is that we can make her not so perfect by tearing her down and make her liable for this whole situation. Which I'm sure, that conversation could be reflected with Bull, even Benny too, having a very love-hate relationship. You even have because she's almost very, I'd almost go as far as saying almost a little control freakish. Well, not even almost, definitely. I mean, if you ask Benny, he would obviously say she's very control freakish because it's like, oh, everything has to be like this. Essentially, everything kind of has to be her way, has to fit this schedule, be done this way. Because you end up finding out that basically a lot of the problems in this episode with the whole pollen situation kind of went back to her assistant. Well, she's kind of like the CEO. I don't forgot what her title was. I don't know why I said double O's. She kind of like top ranking official of the company and whatnot. She's basically, Allison is basically Izzy's like closest confidant and closest friend. Bull in the beginning was kind of like, yeah, obviously Izzy's hiding Allison's hiding something, which she didn't appreciate. The fact is that he said that, and the fact is that he's getting all in her business about Benny. Because it's like, because she blames him, because she outright says it, because it's like, it's your fault Benny is working with you. You just did it all as a ploy to get him on your side, like, so that you could have some kind of win in the divorce. Like, you wanted him on your side. Like, that's all Benny working for you was. Like, that he got inside of Benny's head and talked him into taking that job. It's kind of what his sister was like, because for Benny, it's a simple fact of like she always kind of outliered everything. Like ever since, like I think he used an example of when he was in sixth grade, she laid out all his clothes. Being a lawyer, working to become a DA and stuff like that. That was kind of the path she set for him. I mean, in her defense, she goes, honestly, you were like such a. I saw the potential you had, and so she wasn't trying to it's an interesting thing because it's like for her she didn't realize the way she was until like a lot of this stuff came to light, because until she heard Benny really talk. The fact is Benny's like for the first time, the turning her down was kind of the first time he did something of his own volition. Like he felt like felt like he was in control of his life for once and not just following the map that his sister laid out before him. Which that in itself kind of made her think like, oh yeah, the fact is that Bull just manipulated you and stuff like that's why she has such a big problem with Bull, as well as why her and Benny haven't talked in all this time. It's just obviously siblings have their issues. I know. I have two sisters of my own, so it's like I get that, but it's like, it seemed like it ran deeper than that. It's just a lot of stuff that they never really talked about. And I guess more so for Benny's case, it's just like he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to hurt his sister's feelings, I guess, because she's always been there. It seems like she took care of him a large part of his life, because we really don't really hear anything about their parents. The way they were talking about it almost seemed like she kind of raised him. So I don't know, their parents never really came up in conversation, so she probably took care of him most of their life. So but getting back to, like, I know I'm like rambling all over the place, but when going back to the Allison thing, like Allison, you kind of feel bad for her because basically she was overworked, because it's like, oh, she has to keep up with Izzy, which isn't the easiest thing, because it's like she has this whole scheduling thing. She's kind of got her own work ethic, and it's like, oh, she's by the number. It's like, oh yeah, I got her life scheduled out by the second, the minute, the hour, and whatnot. So I really should have done that in reverse order. I don't know why I went from a smaller increment to a bigger increment like that, but you get the point. And the fact is, for someone like Allison, it's hard to keep up. And basically, Izzy wanted to increase production of like what their that powder and whatnot, but their supply is normally only 1,000 at a time. Well, basically this time they ended up getting 2,000, and you end up finding out that Allison went to another distributor to kind of make up for that, because she didn't want to disappoint Izzy. She didn't want to let her down, just because it's like, she was so stressed out, and she just didn't want to, out of pride, and just because she didn't know how Izzy would react, because it's like, you would like, she inspires a lot of people, and a lot of people look up to her, and in that sense, because they look up to her, because she's put herself on such a high pedestal, any sort of failure for most people feels like, even the smallest bit, like even if it's something out of their control, they will feel like they're a disappointment, that they messed up big time. In Allison's case, that's why she pushed herself to get it from another distributor, which you could argue was Allison's fault why that happened. Turns out that's not the case. Even though she got it from a different distributor, it didn't change the fact that the company was like, even the other distributor was good at their job. Like there was no cross contamination. There's no way the pollen came from them. So it kind of got Allison off the hook. The whole experience, like, it seems like it taught Izzy. I mean, we don't necessarily see it, but it seems like you can kind of infer that basically from Izzy's situation throughout this episode, it kind of taught her how to kind of take a step back and realize that she kind of has to slow down, and kind of realize like she can't hold other people to such high expectations. It's kind of the same thing what she was doing with Benny. It's like, because she saw his potential, that's why she pushed him so hard. But the fact of the matter is, never took time to it's like, oh, she had these aspirations for him, but it's like she never took the time to ask him what did he want. So I mean, even just that, there's like so much. This episode was filled with so much stuff. I love the whole jury selection, especially with the mock jury, especially because it's like Chunk's trying to find it like a proper attire to get her dressed in, because it's like they need to kind of make her more relatable. So Chunk ends up putting her in a suit, but then the mock jury comment, some of them are like, no, oh, is she trying to make fun of people who are, don't have as much money as she is? Because like dressing like that, it's like, it doesn't fit her at all. It's almost like she's mocking people who have less money than her. And then the fact is that she had her original outfit. It's like, oh man, that just makes it's like, one lady is like, I wonder how much plastic surgery I'd have to get to look like her. So it's like you hear the resentment in her voice, and then Bull changes something up slightly, and it's like, oh, they're kind of good for it. It's like, oh, I can back this person, and that small change was simply removing her makeup. Also, side note, I love that when Bull was examining one of the people, it's the dude Carlos that's part of the jury. He's just like, oh yeah, bee pollen, that helps with sex, right? And you almost see this look on like Bull's face, like he was like, wait, what? Did he really, was his expression really saying that? I love the fact is that him and that other juror Sarah ended up hooking up. And basically to complement their mock jury, they had to find a way to hook the mock Sarah and mock Carlos together. So that was just kind of interesting, playing kind of Cupid in a sense, because it's the only way they can make sure that the data was kind of 100% accurate. And then what turned out even more interesting, it's almost very heartbreaking, is that whole conversation with Bull and Izzy. I'm stumbling. I'm sorry. Initially, what I found fascinating with the whole thing, like it was basically a scripted fight, so they can be out in public, people record them and everything. I mean, it's not because even her lawyer was a little worried about, but Marissa's like, technically, it's not jury tampering because it's like we're not forcing them to see it. So this happens to go viral, they might kind of see it. If they end up seeing it, that's on them, not on us. So basically they staged the fight, every word, every action, even to the point where it's like Bull clapping, doing like a oh bravo type of clap in the middle of conversation, almost that like condescending type of clap, like, oh yeah, you've got it all figured out, you're just amazing, that type of thing. But then it got a little serious to the point that Bull kind of started whispering to her. He kind of went off script, and he was talking about the fact is that he's sorry that things ended up the way they did. It was because he wasn't there for her at such a crucial time, essentially. Like, because the reason why he's the way he is, because she's saying the way he is, that he's always breaking stuff down, has to break people down. She says that's one reason why their marriage fell apart. And for him, it's like, the fact is he wanted to know he wanted to know all sides of Izzy. And it seemed like she didn't show every angle of herself. Like, he didn't get to know all parts of her, because it's like, to truly love everything there is about someone, you have to like see every side of them, know every side of them. And it's like, I guess for her, being kind of keeping herself on a pedestal, trying to be perfect, she never let anything slip. And for him, it's like, I'm not trying to find flaws in you to like, oh, pick apart to be like, oh, now I can like, oh, just anything wrong with you, I end up dumping you. It's like, no, I loved you then. Like, I truly loved you. I wanted to know your flaws, because to know that you were like, to make you more human, just to make it easier to connect with you, because I wanted every aspect of you, the good sides of you, your flaws and all is kind of what I'm trying to say. And even bringing up something I was not expecting, apparently she had a miscarriage. That's another big reason why, because for her, she didn't talk about it. And for him, he didn't know how to be there for her. It's one of those situations, and it's something I can kind of relate to. It's like, the fact is that because he couldn't say or do the right thing, he didn't do anything at all, in a sense. And it's a situation where it's like, she didn't need him to say or do the right thing, necessarily do or say anything right. All she needed was for him to be there. And for him, he doesn't know how to do that. Even to this day, that's something hard for him. Like, overanalyzing things is kind of his own means of doing that. But that was just kind of interesting. And then things kind of got a little real, and you see her kind of tearing up and everything. So, for one, he did that so that the fight would be a little authentic. So, he needed a real reaction out of her, because it's like, people up to a certain point will buy certain reactions. But if it's a fake reaction all the way through, people might not buy it. But you take a situation like that and they buy it because it is a genuine reaction. And it was just really sad to hear that. Because for him, he was like, he knows how she wanted a family. It's like he wanted a family too. And it's just, I don't know. It kind of broke your heart a little bit. And the fact is that he was whispering makes it seem like no one else knows about it. So it's something even his team, even Benny doesn't know about. Like, because the fact is that he whispered that. The point was for it not to be picked up on the microphones and stuff like that. So that even Benny doesn't know. And I doubt his sister went out of her way to tell him, like, especially when they kind of made up and everything near the end of the episode. So. But luckily, in the end, Izzy was found not guilty, not liable, to be precise. Because apparently, the real reason behind Olivia dying was actually because, essentially, her husband was having an affair with a woman named, was it Katrina? And essentially, that lady ended up poisoning her, because it's like, oh, George was going to leave leave Olivia for me. But, because they ended up finding out that basically Olivia had kind of changed up her routine. Like, she basically mimicked Izzy's kind of scheduled to kind of get back in better shape, better health, and stuff like that. And originally they were thinking like, oh, she's doing that to get her husband back. But at the end of it, Bull ends up being like, no, the reason why she was doing that was because she was going to leave him. And it's like telling Izzy that basically her regimen kind of inspired her, and it inspires a lot of people. So they kind of take pride in knowing, kind of knowing that they're, always know that they're as good with what she does, So it does seem like there might be a future possibly for her and Bull. I don't know. They kissed. Whether that means something exactly, I don't know. It might be a situation where they've had their time together and it's like there might not be going back for that, and maybe it might not be the right thing to go back for them. Or maybe there will be a future. I mean, we won't really know until we go further in the future to find out and see what happens. I mean, it seems like he hasn't really, well, there was the whole Callisto attorney, what's her name? I can't remember her first name, just like I keep referring to her as Lindsay because that's her last name. But her, like, she's played by Jill Scott, isn't that's actress's name? I'm just, my brain's all over the place. I'm sorry, but that's kind of the last situation. But we don't really know where that stands because I probably missed it. But like, how long has it been since Bull and her got divorced? I mean, well, the fact is because of the whole Benny situation, I'd assume it has been at the very least 3 years or so since they got divorced and whatnot. She ended up bringing up interesting facts about Bull too. Also, the fact is that how he still sleeps in his office and stuff like that. He counters it by saying like, well, I did lose my bed and a whole bunch of other stuff to you and your lawyers. But she's like, even before that, you'd always sleep in your office. He's like, to me, that was, obviously, that was more so because I had to work on a case and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. And it does seem like him and Benny are kind of good too, because for Benny started questioning. It's like, okay, the timing is a little interesting that you would hire me around the time you're getting divorced. But then you have Bull being like, no, the fact is I hired you is because you're very good at your job, and the fact of the matter is I wanted to hold on to something good for my marriage. Like, the fact is, because he ended up telling a story about Benny that basically when him and Benny ended up, it was basically Benny, Izzy, and Bull, and essentially there was some wine around, and Benny's like, oh, sitting down, okay, so what's your intentions with my sister? And then Benny proceeded to drink the entire bottle of wine. So, for him, it wasn't, not saying like trying to say like his marriage was a travesty or whatever. Yes, it had some downsides to it, but there was good sides to it as well. And one of those plus sides ended up being Benny. So it's like he wasn't trying to lose that new bit of family he found, I guess, is how you can look at it. So, I don't know. A very interesting episode all around. Like I said, I didn't know what to expect when it came to Izzy, the ex-wife of Bull. It's like, I didn't really know what to expect. And am I satisfied? Yeah. She's a very interesting lady. And, it does make you a little sad that things didn't work out, but it's just like, the way they act around each other. The actress who played Isabel and, Michael Weatherly, I think they did a very good job in this episode. I try not to do that too much, kind of, take it to that meta level of just like, oh no, not just within the show, but the actors themselves. I try not to kind of break the fourth wall in that situation when kind of talking about shows, but I do it on occasion. And it's just like, I feel like they did a very good job, just the interactions between them. It's like, you can tell they're exes, but you can also tell they did a very good job of showing that, oh, there's still that little bit of a spark there. It's probably one of those situations that no matter how far apart they grow, the fact is they will always kind of still love each other. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Really quickly, the fact is, now that I've gotten what I wanted about Bull, maybe we can take this time to also learn about everyone else in the team as well too. We've learned a little bit about Benny, so it's kind of interesting. Learning about Bull's past ended up helping us learn a little bit more about Benny's. Granted, we still haven't learned all there is about Bull's past, but I'm hoping that in the future we get to learn a little bit more about everyone else's past as well. So I'm got my fingers crossed, hoping for that too. So, but really, that's all. At this point, really, it's the end this time. So, till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love, light to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.